it's easier to do this if it's a specific skill or something that you can control.
Mm-hmm.
What if it's something that you can't control? So what if it's something like, as a hockey player, I'm small,
Yep.
right? Or
Yep.
what if it's, I can't think of another example at the moment, but what if it's something that you don't have direct control over? What do you do with that kind of situation where I can't work on being taller?
Yeah, no, for sure. I was that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to answer? Want me to answer? Yeah. So I think that's going to go into what I was kind of going to say.
Yep.
This is the thing is, and ironically enough, yesterday my buddy called me and he talks about this stuff all the time. He's very good at it. But what here's the question, right? This is where it's mental. And this is why visualizing is so effective, because you're seeing yourself do something well, right? You're seeing yourself in a successful place. Your self-talk is very important because you have a choice of what you're going to say. So it's like Dr. Novatsky said one day when we had him on our podcast, and he's a sports psychologist. He says, when you're watching a TV show or the TV's on at home, if you're watching something that you just think it's a horrible show or TV show, most people don't sit there and go, this is horrible. Like, why do they do this? I wish they wouldn't do that. And you sit there for 2 hours watching it and complaining and saying, well, this is a waste of time. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous. What do you do? You change the channel. That's what you do. Because I'm not going to why am I going to waste my time watching this, or this is not what I'm interested in? And if people could tune that into their own brain, and actually that's why that book, The Power of Now, was so helpful for me, because it was teaching me how to get in my own head, to get out of my own head. Like, actually think about what your thoughts are. So if here's a neat thought. This is what my buddy was telling me yesterday. He just said it in a really neat way. He said, if you could sit there with yourself and do what we're doing right now, put me across from me or you across from you, and actually look at you speak and listen to what's going on in your head, and just close your mouth and listen to yourself. And you're, all right, so there's me, I'm looking at me, and me's talking to me and telling me what's going on in my head. What would that conversation be like? Would you be looking at this guy going, what are you talking about? Most people would be doing that. Like, why are you beating yourself up like that?
Yeah.
Because what is most people's self-talk or thoughts is, okay, let's just keep it hockey right now. It goes like, oh God, those guys are big. It's a big game. I hope I can score a goal. Like, oh man, I wish I would have scored there. Like, man, I've been playing like shit lately. And well, that's not a good channel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you sat there across from yourself, you'd go over there and you'd smack yourself. You'd say, don't talk about yourself like that. It's stupidity.
Yeah.
Right? What you should be saying to yourself is maybe, how can I get to the net more? How can I score more? How can I finish hits? How can I be better? And actually telling yourself and visualizing yourself the great things about yourself as a player, as a person. So if you do that, like, we would talk ourselves out of everything if we actually, and that's why we lack success in a lot of times in confidence, because if you listen to what you've actually told yourself, not only for the last hour, but since the day you were born, you've learned how to tell yourself how bad you are at things, instead of how good you are at things. And that's like, it's number one to me, like, really. And and now this is deep. Like, actually, this is deep. And people don't just, like, a 10-year-old kid's not just sitting there, okay, I'm going to visualize and start telling myself good things, right? But it's your channel that you're watching, and you have a choice. So that's where parents can really be very, very helpful.
Oh yeah.
Right? Now, the problem with that is, like, parents have just a lot more years of that self-talk, right?
Yeah, they probably have it themselves. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's like 100%. But this is where you can be actually helpful, and you get it. You can do it together, right? So when kids are beating themselves up or they're not doing well, because you can all see it, or even our words to our kids, like to my kid, it's like, if I don't say the right thing, it could be effective of good or bad, right? So that's one of the things that I think parents could really be effective with, is just, I had a bad game. So, well, let's talk about it. Like, let's talk about what you think a bad game and why, and, well, how do we fix it, or what are the positives to it, and let's work on the positives and finding solutions. Right. That's how your confidence is going to get built, and what can we do? So I know it's like, for younger kids, even for parents, it might be hard to actually say, like, if I was to tell you, and I believe this with the bottom of my heart, if you don't read a book or if you don't spend time reading a little bit of something that's going to be beneficial to you, I don't know how you're going to develop it.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah, totally. I got 2 on that one. Just as you're talking, I was remembering a story when I played T-ball. I think I used this story before in one of the past episodes, but my dad was one of the assistant coaches when I was like 7. And my dad is, he can be like a motivating dude. Like when he talks and he gets in his flow, like talk, especially for little kids, like big guy, like mean looking.
Yeah.
And he was pretty motivating. And when we talk to our team, one of the things he used to always say was that like everyone on the team is equal, which isn't true.
Right.
Depending on what you mean by equal.
Yep.
Right. So everyone's on this team. Everyone made it. In that sense, we're all equals.
Yep.
We all have equal value and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of who's better, obviously there's varying skill levels, right? But that's one thing that he used to hammer into our heads. So some of the weaker kids on our team, he used to always ask guys individually, like, who's better than you? He would ask that actual question, and our answer, everyone would always say, standard answer was no one.
Yeah.
Like, we're all equal. Yeah. Like, we're all here. We all contribute. We all can contribute. We all have the capacity to contribute. And I remember one of the weaker kids on our team, it was like we were in like our final tournament in Toronto or something like that. And one of the weaker kids on our team, he was hitting at like the bottom of the batting order, like one of those guys. And he came in with this like clutch hit, like primetime clutch hit, like cleared the bases, got a couple runs that were big in this game, whatever. And I still remember it. I'll never forget his face. I still remember it. I was like 7 or 8 or whatever. And he came back, like he touched home plate, came back to after he got back to the dugout, and my dad did that. My dad went on one knee, looked right at him, and he was just like, "Who's better than you?" And he just said it. He's like, "No one." Like, lighten up.
Yeah.
And this was a kid that was weak. He was not a strong player.
Yeah.
But it's really important that what you're telling yourself and how you frame things for yourself can either make you feel like you're like, validated and good enough and all that kind of stuff, or the opposite. And so for this kid who actually wasn't as good as most of the guys on our team, had an attitude of like, I'm equal to these guys. Like I can contribute to this team, and for his confidence, like what did that do for his confidence playing as a baseball player, as a young kid? Like I'm sure that was huge for him. Yeah. And I don't even know if he would remember that story. I would actually be curious to ask him. But anyways. So
I remember you telling me that before.
Yeah, that was my one point. And then the other thing I was going to say is, if it is something that you maybe don't have as much control over, so if you're a smaller guy or whatever, like the example we were giving, the beauty of life now, is, especially with social media and how everything's connected, is you can find an example of 100%. Someone who's exactly like you that did it, that did the task that you're trying to accomplish. So this is a question that we get all the time from guys that are small. Is like, I'm smaller, what do I do? Kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And there's not one answer. There's a lot of things you can do, but go find someone that's like you and find out what they did. How can you follow in that path? If you're a shorter, smaller, not as thick of a kid and you're trying to be a hockey player, that go watch Brendan Gallagher. Go watch how he plays. He's small. Yeah. He can do it. Go watch whatever other small guy you want to watch. It's like, even if you never grow an inch, which for most kids, like a lot of them just haven't grown yet, and they'll all be average size because usually the average is the average
somewhere.
So most of them are going to be in the range anyways. So sometimes it's just patience. But even if you feel like you're smaller, one thing is like maybe you haven't grown, but number 2 is go find a kid that's small. Go find a player that succeeded that's exactly like you. Yeah. And they'll tell you what happened. Like you'll find them talking about what happened and what they had to do because someone has asked them that question. Yeah. Well, you're a smaller guy. How do you make it work? What do you do to make it work? Yeah. And most of them are going to say, well, I never think of myself as being small. I try to play bigger. I try to compensate by making sure I'm grinding and playing hard and whatever. Like they'll tell you. They'll tell you exactly what you need to do. So that's another great thing you can do as a exercise if you're not feeling confident in something you can't control. You can find someone who did it with that same issue that you're having.
Yeah, 100%. And like I was just going to say the same thing about the things that you are out of your control. It's like, so if we use the small example, it's like, okay, so that then you're smaller, right? Okay, we know that. So it comes down to like that mental toughness again, like, and if when you're a kid or parent, you might not use that term, but it's like, what's the solution? It's okay. We can sit there and say, well, I'm small. And you hear that over and over. Then you've talked yourself out of, not out of it. You've talked yourself into believing that you're small or too small to do something. So what can you do? You can control what you can control. Okay. Well, you can't make yourself taller. So what can I do? Well, I can make myself faster, possibly. I can make myself smarter, like maybe develop a brain for the ice. I could make myself like really, really hard to play against and have a really, really, a really big bite instead of just, the bark. So you can do that, and you can make yourself like extremely strong, like built like a fire hydrant. Those are things that you can actually control. And then as you're doing those things, it's a solution. And when you have a solution, you work towards it, then you actually are building confidence so that no one, people used to say Ty Domi was small. Well, he's small, but he used to beat the crap out of every guy in
Yeah,
the NHL.
seriously,
So he didn't care
seriously.
about small. It was like it was his fuel, right?
Yep.
So like for everything that goes against you, you can make it an asset, right? If you're let's say you're a heavier set kid, right? Like that's you can control that to a certain degree, but some guys just have a little bit of a fat gene, right? Like if they look at a carbohydrate or if they look at food, they gain a couple
Yeah,
pounds, right?
yeah,
So okay, if you know that's a thing together, your family, whatever, especially when you're young, it's like in the right way, deal with it.
yep,
Right. I know that I got to be careful or maybe I have to exercise a little bit more, but that's a thing.
yep,
So you use that. And it's the same with maybe you're just a skinny kid. Okay. Well, we know what we have to work on, and you might have to work out a little harder, eat a little bit more, and maybe you're gonna stay skinny. But there's what you can control, like right, control the controllables. It's like do what you can do to make yourself better. But then and the thing that you're so focused on might not be the thing that's actually the thing.